Who's pulling the strings behind America's unrest? We'll peel back the layers. Blaze News The Mandate starts right now. Welcome in, everyone. I'm Jill Savage, back in the chair. Thanks to Matthew Peterson, who filled in for me last night and let me have a day away from the Twitter feeds.
You're welcome. It was great to be in your chair. It was kind of fun over there.
Yeah, and you sent me a selfie to remind me that you were actually in my chair. And our friend, a long-distance dedication, Chris Bedford, our DC politics editor, I missed you too.
I missed you. Although I tell you what, I did love that closing Peterson monologue last night. You know, maybe we'll let him sneak in every now and then with some thoughts. There was some fire spitting going on.
Yeah, we'll do that. We let Peterson have his rants every now and then. And the rant today is going to be all about our justice system, because Americans thought that they were going through and electing their prosecutors. But behind the scenes, there's an activist group run by a former public defender, of course, funded by George Soros. But J.D. Vance filled in as the host yesterday for the Charlie Kirk show. So let's take a look at what he had to say about this.
Did you know that the George Soros Open Society Foundation and the Ford Foundation, the groups who funded that disgusting article justifying Charlie's death, do you know they benefit from generous tax treatment? They are literally subsidized by you and me, the American taxpayer. And how do they reward us? By setting fire to the house built by the American family over 250 years.
Now, Matt, call me crazy, but there was probably a time in our history that people thought they were actually going through and their district attorney would actually be running their own office. But right now, America's criminal justice system is actually being run by a lot of outside activists and donors.
Yeah, I think you can repeat this over and over again, but it's hard for people, regular people who just are living a decent life, to actually intake and internalize, because even when you say the word George Soros, everyone knows he's bad, right? But how this actually works is exactly what you said. It's not democracy. You have billionaires, more than just George Soros, funding organizations that actively influence how we prosecute and how we sentence criminals. And in fact, it's worse than that, because they foment criminality through these groups. And that's the network that needs to be dismantled.
Well, let's go take a look at Donald Trump last week. He was talking about Charlie Kirk after the assassination and what he was talking about with George Soros, and he wants him prosecuted for some RICO charges.
But you know, they have professional agitators. They're professional. They're paid. I had one the other night. I went into a restaurant and this woman stood up. I looked at her immediately. She had money. She wasn't serious. They get paid for it. They're professional, from Soros and other people. And we're going to look into Soros, because I think it's a RICO case against him and other people. Because this is more than like protests. This is real agitation. This is riots on the street. And we're going to look into that.
Chris, break down the professional agitator wing that we are now seeing just across the country. It came in a big way for the Summer of Love back in 2020, but professional agitators are a huge problem right now.
Yeah, and I know I'll try to go quicker than my normal long answers for the YouTubes, but this is something that has been known for a long time, just like you mentioned, Peterson mentioned, the president mentioned, if you're paying attention. The difference here is there's a perfect storm of events where you've got a Republican administration that cares, is aggressive, is wounded, is angry, and wants to do something about it, which most Republicans in the past have not. They're risk averse, they're conflict averse, they let Democrats walk over them. You've got a base that is absolutely demanding action. You've got a House of Representatives with a thin majority that wants action, and a Senate that can be bullied into it. They're going to go at this. They got a DOJ, I pray, that is up to this task. George Soros went around the country just seeding cities everywhere he could win elections with different candidates who spread chaos intentionally. The collapse of our cities over the last 10 years has been by design. It's not some kind of economic thing. It's not some kind of plague. It's by design. Letting criminals out of prison, dropping charges, skewing statistics while crime went rampant, penalizing businesses and other people who actually try to defend themselves. This is intentional. And another thing is, because of years of Republican weakness on these sort of subjects, the left-wing nonprofits are extremely sloppy in a way that Republican and conservative nonprofits simply are not. They take that 501c3 status, they coordinate with campaigns, they coordinate with each other, they have illegal pacts, and they know that no one's ever actually going to go after them because of civility and decency, and let's all have unity and come together, guys. Except, of course, for Republicans and conservative groups. They never do that for them. So I actually think that once you start digging in here, and you want to see what kind of spiders live inside, you're going to find a lot, and you're going to find it more easily than you might expect.
Yeah, we started looking into some of these groups, and one of them is called the Wren Collective, and they're funded by all the left-wing donors, but they go through and they basically just make themselves comfy in all the prosecutors' offices, and they are ghostwriting policies, right? Trump is trying to get rid of all the cashless bail. They'll write op-eds and honestly just try to pressure judges into doing what they want. But Matt, I think one of the worst parts is that they're operating so quietly behind the scenes without contracts so that people can't actually see who's pulling the strings in a lot of these situations.
Yeah, so on one side of the billionaire complex, and this is more than Soros. This is more than Soros, right? There are many billionaires supporting this kind of thing. On the one side, they'll run these candidates, and you know about that already, right? They run these lefty candidates, the DAs, whatever. But what's more opaque, what's harder to see is like on the other side, they have these nonprofits that come right alongside that DA, and they write the op-eds for them in the press. They give them, documents of this is the kind of thing you want to do, this is the policy you want to implement, and they go arm in arm, and that has led to the destruction of a lot of America. And I don't think America is going to stand for it anymore, but we have to expose how this operates and then go after it with the force of even existing law, as Chris just said. If you just look at how these places operate, no one has scrutinized them. No one has investigated them before. So they're fat and happy, and that time where they get away with it has to be over. It has to be done with now. And you see the administration saying this in very strong words from Trump and Stephen Miller.
Yeah, so we see that Jessica Wren is the person who founded this back in 2020, this particular group. She was a former public defender. And you look, and we know the Alvin Braggs of the world, right? But if you look at, there's Rachel Rollins and Joe Gonzalez, and these are just different examples where you see Joe Gonzalez. He's the DA down in San Diego. And there was a police shooting, and there was a quote that says that we got an indictment on the officer in the Eric Cantu case. Thanks for your help from you and your team. And this person responded, we saw. How'd the press conference go? Oh, it went well. Joe got asked all the talking points, and he pretty much stuck to them, right? This is what we're talking about. They're going through and making sure that all of the prosecutors and all the DAs are following all of the left-wing talking points, Chris. And this is just something that goes on all the time that, okay, if they're going to be playing these games, what do we need to do to push back?
Well, there was originally the idea of building your own networks, own conservative networks or libertarian networks, and that just didn't work. The money was spent so foolishly and so stupidly, and it was taken to lost to ideological capture from the left, just like with the Koch Institute is now just a big funnel for conservative money towards left-wing causes. You see that sort of stuff all over the place. But you have to investigate these organizations. You need public disclosure. I mean, some of this stuff is fully and completely and totally legal, like what me and Daniel Turner were talking about a few episodes ago about how they'll bring in judges and say you can satisfy part of your legal requirements to maintain your law degree by coming and learning about global warming from us. They're very, very good at this sort of thing, and they've done it successfully. And one of the main things they do, as Matt pointed out, is just try to hide from scrutiny. They don't actually want people paying attention to how much they're operating some of the aspects of our government and our judiciary, and they've done it very successfully all over the country. But a lot of them whenever I talk to donors and to people who run nonprofits on the American right, especially the effective ones and the efficient ones, they talk about the incredible amount of magnifying glasses on them at all times, the millions of dollars they have to spend in legal fees to defend themselves against constant and ridiculous inquisitions. By the way, all of which rely on press reports. So it's part of that media circle where Congress says they were looking at someone, their friends in the news media just print a bunch of ridiculous assertions, assumptions like, oh, maybe they coordinated J6. Maybe these people are part of dark money or this or that. It's never true, but it's enough for the Senate to dig in. It's enough for the House of Representatives to dig in. It's enough for former DOJs and FBIs under Democrats to dig into their finances, try to go after people, try to disbar them. It's an extremely efficient system, and it's time for Republicans to learn how to use those tools to at least equal this playing field.
Let's take a look at the Facebook Wives Club. Of course, we know the leftists have their billionaires that are out there. It's not just George Soros, but there's the Social Environmental Entrepreneurs. It's called SEE. It's a California nonprofit group. But these Facebook wives, right? Priscilla Chan, obviously Mark Zuckerberg's wife, and Kari Tuna, the wife of Facebook co-founder Dustin Moskovitz. And then you also have John Arnold formerly of Enron. So these are the people that are going out there and saying, no, your way of life, we don't care. So why does this matter that they have all these billionaires? Well, when you come and you look at what's actually going on in the headlines, and we see the Ukrainian woman that was murdered, the person who brutally murdered her was let out 14 different times. It's your DAs that are allowing that to happen over and over and over again. And, if there is any silver lining right now, today we got the Utah DA in the Charlie Kirk case that has announced today that aggravated murder plus 6 additional felony counts will come down on the person who is believed to have shot Charlie Kirk. And there are actually text messages that he admitted to his boyfriend that they announced in a press conference earlier today. He said, I had my chance to take Charlie out. I'm going to do it. I have to grab my rifle. He said, I'm worried about my old man, what he would do if I didn't bring back Grandpa's rifle. Oh, by the way, delete these text messages. I'm going to turn myself in willingly. Again, you're all I worry about, love. And then we have to see an ABC reporter come out there earlier today. And he was like, oh man, this is so it was like touching and heartwarming, like this emotional texts between this assassin and his boyfriend. It was actually heartfelt and touching. No. Don't lose what happened here. I don't care that this man cared about his boyfriend. I care that he murdered Charlie Kirk.
You can't hate the media enough. That line is very true. These people are on serious, and you can't hate them enough. But also, I would say we need to ignore them and move past them. And what you see here in Utah is because of the public scrutiny right on this case, and also perhaps because it's Utah, you don't see the kind of thing that you see in case after case across the country, which all these nonprofits have fomented, which is just, reducing charges, reducing sentences, and letting people off. It's astounding to most Americans if you survey them for, capital crimes, for big crimes, and you look at how much people actually serve these days and what they're charged with. It's light. And so this is a case where there is public scrutiny. It is in Utah. They are coming after this guy. They do seem to have the goods in this case. So that's heartening in terms of justice for Charlie. But as Charlie himself pointed out time and time again, we need to politicize the system and these deaths because overall we are not doing a good job and we're not holding these people to account.
Well, I want to thank you all for watching and listening to the show. And Blaze TV exists because people like you refuse to settle for all the watered down coverage that's out there. We know the endless spin that's on other networks, but this has never been about one voice or one company. It's a movement of people who refuse to sit on the sidelines. So we need you to carry on this mission forward. When you subscribe, you're not just supporting the show. You're actually making sure that truth has a platform, not only today, but for the next generation. So join us at Blaze TV. Join us at blazetv.com/BNT and get $20 off right now. For as low as $8 a month for an annual plan, you can be a part of shaping the future. It's blazetv.com/BNT. Well, Charlie Kirk's assassination did not happen in a vacuum. It came after years of rising political violence. And, something that Chris wrote about in his Beltway brief, your headline was, "We all knew political murder was coming home." Take us through this.
So I was looking at my articles, previous articles I'd written at the Blaze and at the Federalist last month, when I was reporting on the Confederate Memorial. And I was looking at them thinking, all right, your headline here said when they tear down statues, people follow next, because that's what's always happened in history. It was just little warnings like that really came to mind, for example, when Charlie was shot. But there's a lot more to it. There's been open violence. He was killed on campus because of what he was doing on campuses. He was talking to people. He wasn't killed because he was a podcaster. He was killed because he goes into their safe space. And there's been a philosophy on college campuses now that has been growing for a decade that this is our fortress. And it's encouraged by professors, encouraged by administrators, that alternative ideas or things that challenge your stupid viewpoints are threats to you. They're violence against you. These are invaders. They must be repelled. We've watched violence. We've watched Riley Gaines run and have to hide in a room where a mob demanded a ransom for her safe passage out. We've watched college administrators refuse to press charges when she said that she was assaulted twice, physically attacked by a man in a dress twice during that whole fiasco. We watched Charles Murray, an elderly professor, get his hair pulled and get attacked by a mob and need heavy security just to be able to speak or present an idea. Someone who spent his entire life in academia have to go through that sort of thing. We've watched mobs, we've watched Antifa, we've watched threats. So we knew that there was violence. We knew it was tolerated. But there was even darker signs in that. We knew about the swatting. We knew about the fact that people at the Blaze and the Daily Caller and the Federalist and even the National Review had to call their local police stations and say, hey, here's my phone number. If you get a phone call that says, I've killed my family, there's an active shooter situation, local police, call this phone number, because friends of mine and people I know are getting swatted. There was 1 week in March of 2021, I think, where there was 16 different swattings that went down on different conservative pundits, different conservative tweeters, different conservative reporters, anyone who kind of pushes back. And this is not a prank. When you send SWAT to somebody's home and tell them there's an active madman shooter in there while their family's asleep, while their spouse is asleep, while their children are in bed, those police officers at a very high tension, armed and ready, are coming into your home. They're going to try and figure out, they're there to save people, and they think that someone's going to be shooting back at them. This is attempted murder, and it has no compunction about putting that kind of threat and that deadly violence potentially at the doorstep of sleeping children. So this is a violent act. People have been killed in swattings in the past, the targets of them. This is something that's been allowed. You combine that with the campus, you combine that with the fortress mentality, and it was only a matter of time before it took the next step to political assassination. There was a million warnings, and America's massive well of kindness and understanding and making excuses for people has once again been taken advantage of by the American political left for getting away with all kinds of evil until it's on your doorstep, until there's a dead husband, a father who won't see his kids again. We had all the warnings. We tried. We hoped that it would go away. It kept on getting bigger, and now it's here.
Well, Chris, yesterday when we were left unsupervised, I was wondering where you were going on an eloquent rant, but there was a point at which I was like, where was he going with this? And you spoke very well about the importance of education. I mean, we should clip that because we can't emphasize this enough. And I want to zoom in on what you're talking about here when you say the fortress mentality. Because these people have said for a long time that words are violence. Right. And it strikes me that that's part of the fortress mentality you're talking about. Right. I mean, they said words are violence. How dare anyone oppose me? If they say something I don't agree with, they are the fascist and they're literally going to kill people. And that has been instilled, I think, on every campus for a long time now, which is why, as you pointed out yesterday, there's no way you should be sending your kids to these institutions. But talk a little bit about that, because I think that concept, which sounds crazy really to most grown adults, like if you're a grown-ass person, like you shouldn't be thinking this kind of thing, but they literally think this. I mean, they actually think that words are violence.
They do, because they're little delicate psychological flowers. So they're soft as grapes and so easily bruised. Think back to your time in college. If you went there were professors you didn't agree with. There are professors you didn't like. Can you think of a single time in your life or in the history of when you were going to school where you and a bunch of conservative activists or people you knew were shrieking in the face of your local professors? Elderly professors, people have dedicated their life to this. How dare you? You're violence. You're hurting me. You're killing me. To not use my pronouns is genociding me. What are these kids talking about? They're supposedly educated, but they're so overeducated and underintelligent that they come up with these wild ideas that your words are hurting me. You're causing physical harm, that my emotions and the way I feel is a physical attack. If you hurt my feelings, if you misgender me, the rage that comes out of some of these people. There was a funny video of a back and forth over a Charlie Kirk memorial over the weekend where some activist is shrieking, "Did you misgender her? Did you misgender her?" with absolute rage of a 15-year-old boy who got his video game taken away. And the guy she's talking to just says, I guess. I'm not even sure what conversation we're having here. You look back at what made Jordan Peterson famous in the first place. He was just a local professor in Canada who was shrieked at, screamed at, accused of genocide by activists, and somebody caught it in cell phone footage saying, "You're killing us, you're genociding us. What kind of person are you?" And what was his crime? He wasn't using the proper pronouns. He would even use the new name you wanted to give yourself. This sort of thing is being pushed by the administration. It's being the safe spaces, the black only journalist spaces, the no white men allowed spaces, the queer only spaces. They were supposed to be safe spaces, but that kept on expanding and expanding until the entire campus was safe and welcoming to everyone except for normal people or people who possibly questioned. And colleges are supposed to be a place where you have critical debate, where your ideas are challenged. And when you don't get challenged, when no one pushes back, you come out with this moral sureness of your opinions, like you see with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the product of good universities and good private schools, supposedly, who came out with just this complete unwillingness to compromise on any of her ideas because she feels like she has the moral high ground, because at no point in her teenage life or her young life was she pushed back on and said, I think you might be wrong. It's just like it's extremely important for a man to grow up having lost a few fights and been hit a few times in the head, to check where they are, to make them understand what their limits are. It's important for all people who want to pursue education to be shown the error of their ways, to admit sometimes when they're wrong, to be willing and able to learn, like Charlie actually did repeatedly in public, to change their ways, to change their opinions. And you don't get that at the university, where everyone around you just tells you it's the same thing, and anyone who challenges you is threatening you.
I think that's the perfect setup for this new YouGov poll that came out. And because it is about education, it's what we've seen, right? Let's go ahead and look at the people that agree that it's okay to be happy about death. Very liberal, say 24%, very happy for death of a political figure that they oppose. 10% of liberals say it's okay, 7% of moderates, 4% of conservatives, and 3% of people that identify as very conservative. And then the people that agree that violence can be justified to achieve political goals. Very liberal, 25%, liberal, 17%, moderate, 9%, conservative, 6%, very conservative, 3%. You can't make up those numbers. They agree that it's okay to kill people and it's justified to do it. 25 and 24% of liberals are like, yeah, this is fine, Matt. How do we move on from a country like, how do we go forward from this, where they're like, it's okay to do what happened here? It's totally fine.
Yeah, when I look at the numbers like that and some other polls, it strikes me like there might be 30 to 40% of America is okay with saying, something awful about Charlie getting what he deserved or something like this. And this is what's alarming to so many Americans now. But again, if you have the situation that Chris just described, we're not just talking about the Zoomers in college now or something. By the way, the ones who are right-wing are very strong and are going to save America, I believe. But we're talking about 2 or 3 generations now that have been taught something like this in the K through 12 system and in the university system. You're talking about a culture. There's formal education, right, which you get from the time you're in kindergarten to whenever you leave college, if you go to college. And then that's important. That's been teaching this crap for a long time. And then there's the cultural education you get that's ongoing, right, which is the media you consume at all times throughout your life, which is even more powerful. All of that has been saying this is okay. And it ramped up to 11 as soon as Trump came down that escalator, and it was okay to say, he is fascist, he's a Nazi, you call your opponents nasty, bash the fat, all that stuff. So this is not just one generation. This is a segment of American society that goes all the way down. And I think it's like 30, 40% at this point who are really steeped in this stuff. And that's where we're at. I mean, that is just where we're at, folks. So you can have different approaches as to what to do about it, right? But something will have to be done about it, and these people aren't going away. And so how to solve that problem and crack that nut is something that everyone should be thinking about right now.
Yeah, and we will be definitely talking about that in the next few weeks and months, because this is absolutely the conversation that needs to be had on the right, is how are we going to deal with this? But Chris, it's so good to see you again. I did miss you yesterday, so I always appreciate
I missed you,
seeing
Jill.
you back here as well. So
I'll wear a
we
tie.
will.
I'll wear a tie tomorrow
Will you?
too, I promise.
I was actually going to ask about that, because when Bedford doesn't wear a tie, it like throws our whole day off.
You know, it's been a day.
I'm a human highlighter over here when I see this dress actually on camera, but you know what? We're going to go with it. It's a Tuesday. We're moving on the best we can. Bedford, we'll catch you tomorrow.
See you then.
Don't go anywhere. When we come back, we'll have one of our favorites, J. Michael Waller, right after this. Well, we spend a lot of time talking about politics and culture, but we know that there's so much noise and battles and all the craziness in this world. But if you're a woman, listen up, because even if there's a woman in your life that you care about, you need to know about Share the Arrows. It's happening on October 11th here in Dallas, and it's hosted by BlazeTV's own Allie Beth Stuckey. It's the second annual one, but it's built to encourage, equip, and speak truth to women that are trying to stand firm in today's world. So if you've been craving real encouragement and biblical truth, this is for you. If you're a dad, a husband, or a brother, and you are thinking about a woman in your life who might need this, well, go ahead and look into it, because we know that culture is pulling us in the wrong direction right now, and this is a chance to reset and get grounded in the truth. All the tickets and details are at sharethearrows.com. That's sharethearrows.com. After Charlie Kirk's assassination, the question is now, what comes next? Our next guest warned years ago that the left coalition is weaker than it looks, and today we're seeing those fractures alongside the rise of radical groups that are openly pushing violence on campus. So J. Michael Waller joins us right now. So Mike, it's good to see you again. You had this article that we saw from 2020 called Stop the Divide, and the Democrats were relying on the extremist auxiliary groups that they couldn't fully control. But in light of Charlie Kirk's assassination and the rise of these openly militant groups on campus, how do you see all of that just playing out right now? Because there's so much to dive into.
There are a lot of ways to do this, but the key right now is when people are talking about unity of the country, we have to accept that, but we have to force the mainstream liberals in America to denounce these organizations by name and to distance themselves from those organizations, those groups, and their funders. This is something they won't do.
Yeah, that I've been thinking a lot about this point, man. This is exactly what needs to be hammered all throughout. I mean, I think about corporations as well, right? Who were funding adjacent groups to some of this. Certainly with BLM, they all took a knee. We should be demanding right now that they bow to the rest of the country and say something about that, speak out against this kind of thing. But you say they won't do it, and why do you think that is?
Their financial and activist base depends on them being silent. So you won't hear Chuck Schumer or any of the mainstream liberal Democrat leaders. They're not going to come out and denounce these groups by name and to tell people to stay away from them, because they can't. They're beholden to the large funding sources and to the Hollywood and other celebrities who will drop their support for them if they cause these cleavages. Their view, it's really strange. I've talked to some of them recently. They would rather see things go to pieces than allow Trump to fix the country. And they've literally told me as much.
Well, we can name names. We aren't bound by any of those rules here on Blaze TV. So there's the Armed Queers of Salt Lake City, which I never thought I would be on TV talking about a group like this. But
no, I didn't talk to them.
They're a socialist LGBT organization that's out there, and they're dedicated to self-defense, and self-determination of all the queer and transgender people in the movement. I mean, it sounds lovely when you hear these words, but then you get into their membership form and the things that they believe, right? If we look at bullet point number 4, the end of commodification of housing by landlords and recognition of housing as a human right. Number 6, dismantling the bourgeoisie nonprofit industrial complex and replacing it with an organized revolutionary movement. You have dealt a lot with socialist communist movements. When you look at just what's going on right now, how do you break this down for the audience?
This is a radical revolutionary movement that, if you look at item 4 on your list there, comes straight out of Leonid Brezhnev, the old Soviet Communist Party leader, giving the Lenin Peace Prize to Angela Davis, abolishing prisons and police. This is an old Soviet active measures campaign, but the problem with the old Marxists and the old communists is they're not revolutionary enough. They're evolutionary. They work within the confines of the First Amendment and the law in general. The revolutionaries don't do that. So when they say revolutionary, when they term things in terms of resistance, they're not talking about simply self-defense, because they view all of us, our country, our Constitution, our Republican form of government, our democratic process, they view all of that as inherently oppressive and therefore irredeemable. So it all must be overthrown. So when they call somebody or something fascist, they're talking about anybody in the political mainstream, anybody and anything, any institution. It's all fascist. So it has to be destroyed. That's what the revolutionary movement's all about.
Yeah, and this is something that I hope, after the events of last week, the right is finally going to take seriously enough to do something about it. You've written about this. We had your colleague Kyle Schindler on the show yesterday talking about this. The question that everyone's asking is, both what they can do, what can I do in my personal life, which I love because I think people really are thinking about that seriously now. But the overarching question is, how do we stop this? Because we didn't stop. I remember, that's an article that I published when I was with American Mind, and we created that with you and others saying what needed to be done then. I don't see that a lot of those measures have been put in place. And I do hear great words from the president and from Stephen Miller that sound like they are committed this time. But what should be done?
Well, let's start what each of us can do as citizens. And you can see it already on X. People are screenshotting everything. People are making PDF copies of the pages of these radical organizations before they're taken down. They're downloading the videos before they can be taken down. They're setting up their own databases to aggregate all this information. That's all citizen action.
Yeah.
It didn't cost money to do. It was just people doing this on their own to do their part. And this is all really important. That's the first thing. Second thing is, we can't be tolerant. We've been tolerant all our lives, and look where this has gotten us.
Exactly.
We don't want to interrupt Thanksgiving dinner. We don't want to interrupt family life or social occasions or our nice, comfy environment. It's too bad, because if this stuff happens in Utah, imagine what's going to happen to the rest of the country. That's
so well said. And I look at that and I say, oh, but you see the response. Well, both sides do this, right? Both sides are the Republicans, right? People are going on TV shows and say the Republicans really need to tone down the rhetoric right now. How do you respond to the both sides-ism that is trying to take place right now over legacy media?
Well, it's an easy escape, but it's really a cover for the extreme violent left. But reasonable people can say, yeah, well, why not just both sides just calm down the rhetoric? Listen to Trump out there. If we just calm things down, we can come together. Well, yes and no. But, the MAGA movement and conservatives have never tolerated white extremists or prejudiced people or hate groups or anything. They've never tolerated them. They've thrown them out. I was there when, Cernovich punched out a Nazi to get him out of the group. I mean, it was a great thing to see early on. So this stuff has never been tolerated, but that extremism and that violent extremism over the past 20 or 30 years has been tolerated and welcomed in the radical left. You go look at some of the people who've been coming back from Cuba recently this year. The Cubans, they're still training American radicals. A group came back last May. In fact, an organizer of Armed Queers of Salt Lake City came back from that trip in Cuba. What are they doing in Cuba and coming back? How are they radicalizing people? And why aren't the mainstream politicians on the left condemning it? If you have someone like Carla Walsh who comes back from these Cuba solidarity trips, she's worked with the two senators from Massachusetts, Elizabeth Warren and Ed Markey. They have never, and I've asked them, distance yourself publicly from her, and they just don't respond at all. So if the conservative side has no problem and never has had a problem with just getting rid of these crazy extremists, getting them out of the movement, but the left won't do the same on their side, then how can anybody come together?
So, can you speak to sort of the middle ground actions between, on the one hand, sort of private sector exposés, people, citizen activists, on the other hand, what we talked about with Kyle yesterday, designating Antifa overseas a terrorist group. In between, it strikes me there's a lot that could be done that's done all the time by the left in terms of investigations and just making sure everyone's following the law, which also has the benefit of exposure. I mean, it seems like, in other words, in between citizen activism and media like Blaze exposing these people and explaining to people what's going on and who they are, and kind of the top line stuff that Trump and Stephen Miller are talking about, and sort of declaring Antifa, a terrorist organization. What's in between there? Because there's got to be a bunch of stuff in between there that a lot of regular people are thinking, like, what should be happening?
Well, there's a lot on the state and local side that has been done, that can be done, and that must be done. So if you look at the Utah case, for example, Utah carries a death penalty for the murder of Charlie Kirk. It would be very hard for the federal authorities to get that stiff a punishment in a jurisdiction like that. So oftentimes it's best to let these cases be tried as state and local crimes in state and local jurisdictions. But a lot of that requires education of the law enforcement leadership and the sheriffs and the judges, and then the people who make up the jury pools. So when you at the Blaze and some of our other friends go out and they publicize this work, that's educating people. Right now, we need to work with our elected sheriffs, and we need to unelect sheriffs who aren't interested in fighting this and who are not tough on this. That's the great thing about sheriffs, is they're all elected. Mm-hmm. We need to pay attention to the prosecutors. Remember all those Soros prosecutors? They're still out there. Look at all the judges who are letting people off the hook for murdering people. They all have to be exposed, not doxxed, not anything that's going to endanger them, but their names have to be known, and they have to be known in their communities so that they can be held accountable, publicly, because it's all open information. Not to intimidate judges at all, but to get judges to think twice about, well, wait a minute, because they do think, what are my colleagues going to say? What are my neighbors going to say? What's my social circle going to say? This goes through their heads as they reach their verdicts. So it has to go through their heads that they are going to be held accountable by name for the bad guys that they let off the hook.
Mike didn't even know that's the theme of our show today. It's, good minds, we all think alike. So last question for you, radicals. Are they getting stronger right now, or are they just getting more desperate?
They're getting both. Looking at the radicalization of Tyler Robinson, for example, he was radicalized online with trans, furry, left-wing extremist groupings. Okay, so this is a subculture, trans, furry, left-wing extremism. So they have their own social and personal issues and issues with their parents. They have their own sexual proclivities and experimentation. They want to hide somehow, but they want to be part of something bigger. But what the foreign extremists do, like the Cubans, and what the Antifa people do, is they bring them in because these guys also have a big beef with society. Society won't accept them. Society, therefore, hates them. Society is thus illegitimate and must be torn down. So murdering Charlie Kirk was an act of resistance in the eyes of a lot of people in this movement. It was an act of taking down a system that has to be torn apart.
J. Michael Waller. Go buy his book. It's big intel. He'll not only tell you everything about the FBI and the CIA, but all of the communist, Marxist revolutionaries that we are seeing play out, unfortunately, in this country right now. Always good to see you.
Good to see you too, Jill. Bye, Matt.
Don't go anywhere. When we come back, Pam Bondi made some thoughtful remarks. We'll get your replies after this.
There's free speech, and then there's hate speech. And there is no place, especially now, especially after what happened to Charlie, in our society.
Do you see more law enforcement going after these groups who are using hate speech and putting cuffs on people, so we show them that some action is better than no action.
We will absolutely target you, go after you, if you are targeting anyone with hate speech, anything. And that's across the aisle.
All right, well, that clip has gotten millions of views. So I asked you on X, say what? What's your response to AG Pam Bondi's statement? But first, before we get to your replies, let's go back to an old X post from Charlie Kirk himself, where Charlie wrote that hate speech does not exist legally in America. There's ugly speech, there's gross speech, there's evil speech, and all of it is protected by the First Amendment. Keep America free. Now, we should say that Pam Bondi came out today to clarify that hate speech won't be prosecuted. I think that she saw all of your replies. Let's get to your replies, where Heretic Dave starts us off, and he says that all speech must be protected. You don't have to like what anyone else says, but if you can make them stop saying things, how long will it be before someone else makes you stop saying things?
Yeah, that's a basic American principle. Now, I will say that there is such a thing as a law, which is what Bondi is referring to in her clarification, that there is such thing as blasphemy laws and obscenity. Like, we've never had complete free-for-all in the entire free speech tradition, but when it comes to political speech, America has always been very open and free, and the idea of hate speech is an enormous problem and really an affront to the First Amendment.
Mike replied that this is what happens when someone doesn't actually understand evil exists. She is, at best, trying. Hate speech is commie language. They're using language that incentivizes violence. The issue requires more intellect than a Fox News catchphrase from 2018. Tough but fair, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, I would say about Pam Bondi, I mean, at best trying. I mean, I think she is trying. I don't think that Pam Bondi has ill intention at all here, but very unfortunate way to phrase this in this moment.
And Dave wrote that this is why women make bad leaders. Bet you won't read that on air. LOL. Well, Dave, we did read it on air. And you know what? Maybe they do make bad leaders. Maybe they don't.
We read it on air. What more do you want?
We just look at everything, right? We've seen the comments online, right? People are like, oh, why can't we get Matt Gaetz? Why we can't get Stephen Miller now? There's a lot going on. There's a lot of discourse out there on X right now.
Yeah, well, I think that, both in Kash Patel's case, unfortunately, and in Pam Bondi's case, there's been some missteps. And look, we can critique on the right. That doesn't, that this is not something that we aren't allowed to do. It's not hate speech to say there's been some missteps, and this was one of them for Bondi. Now, she tried to clarify afterwards, and there is something to the fact that we do have laws about obscenity still on the books, the liberals in the 60s tried to get rid of, and we have laws even about blasphemy, like things that can incite violence. We've always had laws about that. But when it comes to political speech and, what the left did with the hate speech law, it's like either you did something legal or not. Adding the hate into the criminal law was a terrible idea. And adding the hate into the speech is sort of nonsensical because, that's very much what's in dispute. The reason you have free speech is because one person says it's hate and the other person says it's true, and the left has leveraged this. So it's the exact opposite of what we actually want to prosecute people on right now.
Well, we see what's going on in Congress right now. Chip Roy's out there in the House trying to make sure that they defund all of the leftist NGOs. And I think that's an important step now. We know Congress is broken, so I don't know if that's actually going to happen or not. Right. But we look at the DAs, the things that we've been talking about so far today, and it's just there are so many different steps that we need to take. Like, where do we even begin to try and tackle this problem?
Yeah, well, let me start with Stephen Miller's clarifying words today. Miller had a tweet that I was about ready to say something about this, but why bother when Stephen Miller from his perch on high can say it perfectly? The path forward is not to mimic the ACLU of the mid-90s. It is to take all necessary and rational steps to save Western civilization. He's not throwing Pam under the bus. She said, oh, I made a mistake, and clarified. But what he's saying is the hate speech stuff, which the ACL produced in the 90s, that's not it, Chief. That ain't it. What we're talking about now are the steps necessary to save Western civilization, and we have about a year's time before it gets a lot harder for the administration to accomplish anything. And so in that year, we have a ticking time bomb. We have a ticking clock in which we can actually get things done. The question is, what are the steps practically on the ground that are necessary to save Western civilization, both in your own life, in my own life, and also at the federal level, state and local level, politically and culturally? So, Chip Roy, will that get anywhere in Congress? I mean, I don't trust Congress. And Congress is popular as it is for a reason. But it's good that they're pushing this now. A lot of these Republican leaders actually did put forth bills during the BLM era to go after this complex, but nothing ever happened in the past. Nothing ever happens was true. Well, now we're in the era where everything happens all the time. And now it's time, as you see Stephen Miller saying, you see the president saying, to actually take action steps. So that doesn't just mean, as Kyle said yesterday, declaring Antifa a terrorist group and going after them, although that's freaking obvious and should have been done years ago. That means going after all the quote-unquote respectable organizations that either say nothing about this violence or that actually fund it. That means all the lefty organizations with all the fancy people attached from, Soros' Open Society. That we talk about that all the time. But there's also organizations like the Rockefeller Foundation. What have they funded in the past 5-6 years? And how has that money been laundered from one organization to the next? I sure as hell hope that not a cent went to violence in America, because if the right had done that, the left would have already shut those organizations down. Their computers would be seized, their assets would be seized, they'd be frozen. Everyone in the country would know that they financed hate. There'd be protests outside their offices. That is the kind of thing that we're talking about that needs to happen now, except we don't do that in a crazy way. We don't have protests, we have prayer vigils. And in this case, we are going to put people in jail. We're going to put people in prison. We're going to investigate people, but lawfully. Even just using the current law on the books, if you scrutinize the left's NGO complex, you will find all kinds of wrongdoing. Just like Act Blue, their funding mechanism, is a vehicle for money laundering. This is the kind of thing that can be done, must be done, and all it's going to take, Jill, is the political will to do it and making sure that we have competent people in place in the federal government to get it done.
Ooh, that sounds like a pretty high bar. I don't know if we're going to be able to do that. That sounds pretty unreasonable, Matt. You want competent people getting things done in Washington, D.C. Not only does Antifa need to be designated as a terrorist organization, but the Muslim Brotherhood, right? Like, these are not hard things. These are like, this shouldn't even be like we talk about 80-20 issues. Well, that shouldn't even be an 80-20 issue. Something that my dad says all the time is, hey, quit funding the people that hate you. That shouldn't be hard. And yet we have the uniparty there in Washington, D.C. that's just like, oh, sure. You want to go ahead and give all the money to all these people? Hey, we got USAID. We got all the money out of there. We shut it down. It's a good start. There's a long way to go. This is one of the things that we are learning right now is all these left-wing NGOs, they are going to need to stop getting money from all of the taxpayers out there. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you back here tomorrow night.
It better happen. It's going to happen.